And later, Syrian Bashar al-Assad spoke to the group of Arab leaders at this summit in Beirut.
After the beginning of the peace process in 1991, Syria asked for some guarantees from the sponsors of the peace process, in which they insist on the readiness of Israel from leaving all the Syrian territories. After the negotiations at that time, we had the proposal of Rabin. This proposal insists on the full withdrawal of Israel from all the territories of Golan to the borders of 1967. Then Rabin was assassinated and the peace process was stopped. And when we resumed talking about the peace process by the end of the 1990s, Syria has asked to see back this document that is a guarantee, and the US administration has denied its existence and accused Syria from lying. After a few months, and all of a sudden, the US administration remembered that this document does exist, but they said that this is not a document, but this is a paper. And this paper that is not a paper led to the fact that land is not land anymore, and the result of that was the peace is no peace. And if we go forward with these new terminology in the future, the rights are going to be no rights, and the Arabs no Arabs, and will become a part of the forgotten past. The first point that should be taken into consideration in talking about peace is that we need guarantees of getting back all the territories that have been lost in 1967, and a recognition or commitment from Israel that it's going to withdraw, or at least a declaration from Israel that it's going to withdraw from all the territories. If not, we're losing our time in any negotiations, because we need a real commitment. We don't want to face any ambiguity. Second point is the sponsorship. There is always a dispute going on between Arab countries and other countries about land. Some of these disputes have been tackled, but others are not. But negotiations are ongoing without sponsors. Why? Because these people have always lived through the history with each other, and they have some brotherhood relationships or friendly relations together. But the situation with Israel is different. Israel was created in 1948 after an international decision, and it was created through expansion and killing and terrorism. It created itself as a terrorist state, and it wanted to tell everybody that it is an enemy state that wants to expand through terrorism and force. So direct negotiations are useless if we don't have a third party that plays the role of a sponsor. Who's going to be this sponsor? Any country can send a sponsor or sponsor the negotiations, but what we would like to say is that this sponsor country is not the one that is going to offer a place for negotiations. He should play the role of judge that relies on the international law and takes care of the execution and implementation and respect of this law during the negotiations. And this sponsor should sanction the party that doesn't respect and implement the law. The sponsorship during the last decade was clearly unsuccessful. It failed more during some periods than others, but it was completely unsuccessful because Israel was rewarded while it was standing against peace, and Arabs were sanctioned while they were standing with the peace process. And this sponsorship was depending on the mood of some employees in the administration and some election interests and personal interests. And what I mean to say that the sponsorship process needs continuity. What I ask from any sponsorship in the future is that the role of the sponsor to be defined. We can define it, or they can define that role. But what we need to know is what kind of negotiations we're taking part in. We should set some criteria to define what does the word commitment mean, commitment in peace. Israel is killing every day hundreds of people, and whenever an Israeli leader says in front of the media that we want peace, everybody's applauding him. This is not a criteria. What we need is a criteria related to the implementation. Then these criteria should define how to sanction the party that is not committed in peace. We need a clear process for that. We need also a dialogue within the U.S. administration, because we always hear different remarks and declarations from the different American responsibles and leaders. At the same time, the role that the U.S. has played as a sponsor in the peace negotiation is due to the fact that it is a superpower, and a superpower is a country that have super resources different than the other countries. But what we would like to know is whether the United States is a superpower in front of the whole world except in front of Israel. Whenever it faces Israel, it becomes a very ordinary country and not a superpower anymore. And a lot of other countries in the world have more clear positions towards this issue than the United States. The United States cannot continue to sponsor the peace process in that way. That's why we need the contribution of the European Union, because it's closer to us from the point of view of the geography, the culture, and because it knows more our thinking and our history, and they can bring some proposals that we might accept. That role that the European Union should play should be clear, and the United States should know that it's not against it. But the role of the European Union should be different from the one that it played in the past. It should be based on the culture and European civilization. And we hope also that the United Nations will play a role in that, because in the absence of a clear sponsorship, it's hard to have effective and efficient negotiations. It's clear that Arabs want peace, and clearly Israel doesn't want peace. But the problem also is that the sponsor doesn't have a clear way to reach that peace. The point now that I would like to mention is about us. We can't ask the countries of the world to put pressure on Israel without doing or taking some measures ourselves. We don't need to beg the other countries to put pressure on Israel. We don't need to beg. But what we could do ourselves is to cut our relations with Israel. Every time Syria talks about that subject, everybody stands against it. We're talking about the Arab cooperation, but what we're asking for is a cooperation at the level of the thought. Cutting the relations with Israel depends on the sovereignty of every country and its own politics, but we ask the countries that have relations with Israel to tell us when we should cut our relations with Israel. What are they waiting for? While now thousands of people killed by Israel are not a reason to cut those relations. So what are they waiting for? They are waiting for Israel to throw a nuclear bomb against the Arab countries or take more aggressive measures. I'm only wondering. The most important point is the Intifada subject for us. And there are different proposals on that subject. Some of them think that asking for peace is negative towards the Intifada. And in the West, they think that if we put an end to the Intifada, we'll reach peace. Both thoughts are wrong. The Intifada and the resistance in general are linked to the occupation. And now the concept of peace is relying on the Intifada concept. Why? Because we have to distinguish between two peace processes. One, between two parties that really want to reach peace, and this doesn't exist now. And another peace process between two parties. The first one, that is the Arab party that wants peace, and the other one is the Israeli party and doesn't want peace. We can't reach peace from one side only. And the role of the sponsor was supposed to be to help the party that doesn't want peace to reach peace and want it badly. And this is what actually the Intifada is doing now. Its message to the Israeli people, or the message it's starting to give to the Israeli people, is that the security comes from the peace and from the implementation of peace. So, as much as we want peace, we want resistance and Intifada to go on. As much as we're working seriously towards reaching peace, we're also working in supporting the Intifada in a greater way. The Intifada is an independence movement. It's an independence war. Either we call it an independence movement or independence war. It is a right, because independence is a right to every people. Every nation has an Independence Day, and it is a right for the Palestinian people to be proud one day, hopefully, of its independence. And it is our role to support him. And it's an obligation for us. Even religions stress on the necessity to support people in their drive for independence. We should stop any link between what happened in September 11th in the United States and our cause, our problems. Some of them say that if the Palestinian issue was resolved, what happened in September 11th wouldn't have happened. And some others say that finding a solution to the Palestinian issue now will protect other countries from other terrorist attacks. So, in this logic, the Israeli-Arab conflict has two constituents, the Israelis and the Palestinians, but they always mean in that conflict the Arabs. The Arabs are the terrorist part. Our cause is completely independent from the terrorism and what happened on September 11th. And it doesn't give any explanation to the security problems in the area. Our only reference in any peace process should be Madrid Conference and the decisions of the Security Council. And few years ago, and few months ago, and few weeks ago, an idea of holding a second peace conference has been mentioned, like Madrid II. And this conference was supposed to launch a new peace process, which means that we'll have to express new principles, while there is no other principles but the ones that we convened on and that has been adopted by the international community, and we have no other means to reach peace.